when the woman writhing in pain in the delivery room dug her nails into my arm and screamed, "The baby's father is your husband." I thought my life was over, but I was wrong. The real apocalypse didn't start when my husband walked through that door, his face pale as a ghost. It started exactly 1 hour later when I held the DNA result in my hand. That piece of paper didn't just reveal a betrayal, it put a dark 30-year-old secret and an incredible miracle right on the table before me. When you hear who left that hospital in handcuffs and who left with a fortune that day, you won't believe your ears. Before we get to that massive shock at the end of the story, please subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments what you would do if you were betrayed. If you're ready, let's begin the longest day of my life. My name is Claire. People know me as the calmest, most composed emergency room nurse in Philadelphia. By the nature of my profession, blood, tears, and chaos are my daily routine. But that day, I had no idea I was about to crash into the emergency room of my own life. I had been married to Ethan for 10 years. He worked in the insurance sector, a man everyone called a model citizen, dignified and serious, or so I thought. Recently, things had changed. Taking his phone into the bathroom, late-night work messages, that icy distance I felt whenever he touched me. There was a suspicion in my heart, but I had no proof. Until those doors flew open. My shift was hours away from ending when the doors burst open and a screaming young woman was wheeled in. Ava. She was only 26. Her contractions were so frequent she was gripping the sides of the stretcher as if she might break them. Labor had started. I immediately put on my gloves and my professional mask. In that moment, I was just a nurse, and she was just a patient. She needed to push, but she was using her strength to talk. She looked deep into my eyes, a look I will never forget for as long as I live. It wasn't pain. It was a look full of guilt. She grabbed me by my collar and whispered breathlessly, "I'm sorry, Claire, forgive me. The baby's father is your husband, Ethan." Time stopped. The ringing in my ears drowned out every sound in the hospital. The sterile instruments in my hand clattered onto the metal tray. "What did you say?" was all I could manage. Ava continued through her sobs. "He told me he hated his wife. He said he was getting a divorce. He's been lying to me for 7 months, Claire." My world had collapsed on my head, but a baby was about to be born. Even though the woman inside me was shattered into pieces, the nurse inside me took over. I swallowed my tears and delivered that baby. The baby was healthy. But my heart felt like it had been born dead. Right at that moment, as if the gates of hell had opened, Ethan walked in. A nurse had alerted him, saying, "The woman giving birth is calling your name." Ethan saw Ava and the baby in her arms. Then he looked at me. I saw the fear in his eyes. Ava screamed, "Here is your son!" Ethan's face turned white as a sheet, his hands trembling. He turned to me, his voice shaking. "Claire, I swear this woman is crazy. I don't even know her. This child is not mine." But Ava kept screaming from the bed, "You're lying. Demand a DNA test. May God take my life if I'm lying." I didn't say a single word. I didn't scream, and I didn't cry. I simply picked up the laboratory form. I turned to Ethan and said in the coldest tone he had ever heard from me, "If that woman is crazy, you have nothing to fear from a test, Ethan. Give me your arm." Samples were taken, sent to the lab with an urgent code, and that damned 1-hour wait began. There was dead silence in the corridor. Ethan had his head in his hands, rocking back and forth as if praying. I was leaning against the wall, thinking about how the result would ruin my life. But little did I know. The result inside that envelope held a miracle that would change not just the father of this baby, but my entire destiny. The laboratory technician appeared in the hallway holding that cursed envelope. Her face was strange, confused, almost frightened. She looked at me, then at Ethan, then back at me. "Mrs. Matthews," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I need to speak with you privately." My heart stopped. Why privately? Why that look on her face? I followed her into a small consultation room. She closed the door behind us and handed me the envelope. "I've been doing this job for 15 years, she said quietly. "I've never seen results like this." My hands shook as I tore open the envelope. The first line hit me like a freight train. Probability of paternity. 0% Ethan was not the father. Relief should have flooded through me. My husband hadn't cheated. My marriage was intact. But the technician wasn't finished. She pointed to a second page, one I hadn't noticed. "Mrs. Matthews, we ran an expanded panel because something in the samples triggered an anomaly flag in our system. This second test, you need to see this." I looked down at the paper. The words swam before my eyes. Genetic relationship detected. Subject, Claire Matthews relationship to infant. Biological aunt probability, 99.97%. The room spun. "That's impossible," I whispered. "I don't have any siblings. I'm an only child. My parents died in a car accident when I was 5. I was raised by my grandmother who passed away 10 years ago." The technician's face was grave. "Mrs. Matthews, the DNA doesn't lie. This baby is your biological nephew or niece, which means one of your parents had another child you didn't know about." I stumbled back against the wall. Ava had been screaming that Ethan was the father. She seemed so certain. How could she be wrong? Unless... My mind raced. I burst out of that room and marched straight to Ava's recovery bed. Ethan jumped up when he saw me, his face desperate. "Claire, please, I told you." I held up my hand, silencing him. I didn't even look at him. My eyes were locked on Ava. "Who told you Ethan was the father of your baby?" Ava's tear-stained face looked confused. He did. Ethan Matthews. He said his name was Ethan Matthews. We met at a hotel bar 7 months ago. He wore a wedding ring. He showed me his insurance company ID badge. He said he was married but getting divorced. We were together that night." "Describe him," I demanded, my voice sharp as a scalpel. Tall, dark hair, green eyes, that small scar on his left eyebrow. My blood turned to ice. "What scar?" "The one shaped like a crescent moon, right here." She pointed to her own eyebrow. "Ethan doesn't have a scar on his eyebrow, but I knew someone who did. Someone I hadn't thought about in years. Someone who had supposedly died before I was even born." "Ava," I said slowly, my voice barely above a whisper, "do you have a photo of this man?" She nodded, reaching for her phone on the side table. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through her gallery. Then she turned the screen toward me. The face staring back at me made my knees buckle. I grabbed the bed rail to keep from falling. It wasn't Ethan, but the resemblance was uncanny. The same bone structure, same build, same dark hair. Except this man was older, maybe in his 60s, with silver streaking through his temples. And there, above his left eye, was that distinctive crescent moon scar. "When did you say you met him?" I asked, my voice hollow. 7 months ago, March 15th. I remember because it was my birthday. March 15th. The same day I had received that mysterious letter at the hospital. The one with no return address, postmarked from Pittsburgh. The one that contained a single sentence. "Your father didn't die in that car crash. He's been looking for you." I had thrown that letter away, convinced it was a sick prank. Someone who knew my history trying to mess with my head, but now, holding this phone, staring at this face. "His name wasn't Ethan Matthews," I said quietly. "What else did he tell you about himself?" Ava's face crumpled. He said he'd made terrible mistakes in his life, that he'd abandoned his family 30 years ago because he was a coward, that he was trying to make amends but didn't know how. He said he wanted to feel young again, wanted to pretend he could start over. She sobbed. "I thought he meant starting over with me. I didn't know he was talking about the daughter he left behind when she was 5 years old," I finished, my voice breaking. Ethan, who had been standing frozen this entire time, finally found his voice. "Claire, what the hell is going on? Who is this man?" I turned to face my husband, tears streaming down my face. His name is Richard Parker, and apparently he's my father. The father who was supposed to be dead. The father who let me believe I was an orphan for 30 years. The father who stole your identity to sleep with a woman young enough to be his granddaughter. The room erupted in chaos. Ava started screaming. Ethan's face went from white to red with rage. He what? Someone impersonated me. Used my name. A nurse rushed in, alarmed by the commotion. I held up the DNA results with shaking hands. "Call security," I said, my voice eerily calm. "And call the police. We have a case of identity theft, fraud, and I'm guessing if we dig deeper, we'll find a whole lot more." But even as I said those words, a tiny voice in the back of my mind whispered, "Why now? Why after 30 years would he come back? Why use Ethan's name? And why? Why do I have the strangest feeling that this isn't the end of the story? It's just the beginning?" 2 hours later, I sat in the hospital administrator's office with a detective named Marcus Rivera. Ethan was beside me, his jaw clenched so tight I could hear his teeth grinding. On the desk between us lay 3 things: the DNA results, Ava's phone, with that photo still displayed, and a thick manila folder the detective had brought with him. "Mrs. Matthews," Detective Rivera said gently, "I need you to understand something. When you called this in, I ran the photo through our facial recognition system. We got a hit, a very big hit." He opened the manila folder. Inside were police reports, newspaper clippings, and surveillance photos, spanning 3 decades. The man in Ava's phone appeared in all of them, aging backward in time like a reverse timeline of criminal activity. "Richard Parker is wanted in 7 states, the detective continued. Identity theft, fraud, embezzlement, and, this is where it gets complicated, suspected involvement in the disappearance of substantial insurance settlements." Ethan's head snapped up. "Insurance settlements? Specifically, life insurance payouts from policies written in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Detective Rivera pulled out a specific document, including a policy for $2.3 million that was paid out to a Margaret Parker in 1993. Margaret Parker, who was listed as the widow of Richard Parker, deceased in a car accident. My grandmother's name was Margaret Parker. The room tilted. "My grandmother," I whispered. "She raised me after my parents died. She told me my father died in the same crash that killed my mother. She received a life insurance payout that she said she was saving for my college education and future. She died 10 years ago and left me everything, her house, her savings, about $800,000 total." Detective Rivera's expression was grim. "Mrs. Matthews, I don't think your mother died in that crash either." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "What?" "There was a car accident in 1993. A vehicle went off a bridge in rural Pennsylvania. One body was recovered, burned beyond recognition, identified only through dental records as Richard Parker. But those dental records, we now have reason to believe they were falsified. The body was never actually Richard Parker." "Then whose body was it?" Ethan demanded. "We don't know. But what we do know is that Margaret Parker claimed both her son Richard and her daughter-in-law Elizabeth died in that crash, even though only one body was found. She told authorities that Elizabeth's body must have been swept away by the river. A search was conducted, but nothing was found. The case was closed. The insurance paid out on both deaths." My hands were shaking so violently I had to sit on them. "Are you telling me my mother might be alive?" "I'm telling you that we never found her body. And I'm telling you that Richard Parker has been active and alive for the past 30 years, using at least 17 different identities in 7 different states. He's a ghost who specializes in insurance fraud, and 3 months ago he started using the identity of Ethan Matthews." Ethan exploded. "How the hell did he get my information? My ID? That's what we're trying to figure out." Detective Rivera said. But Mr. Matthews, where do you work? Sterling Heights Insurance Company. I'm a senior claims adjuster. The detective pulled out another document. And who handles your company's digital security? We outsource to a firm called SecureNet Solutions. Detective Rivera slid a newspaper clipping across the desk. The headline read, SecureNet Solutions under investigation for data breach. The article was dated 2 months ago. Ethan's face went ashen. Oh my God, the breach. They said it was contained, that no client data was compromised. They lied, the detective said flatly, or they didn't know the extent of it. We believe Richard Parker has been working with or for SecureNet Solutions, either as an employee or through a partnership with someone inside. He's been harvesting identities of insurance workers specifically. You're not his only victim, Mr. Matthews. You're just the most recent. My mind was reeling. But why use Ethan's identity to sleep with Ava? That doesn't make sense. If he's running insurance scams, why risk exposure for a one-night stand? Detective Rivera's expression turned even darker. That's the question that brought me here so fast when you called it in, because it doesn't make sense. Unless... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Unless Ava wasn't random. Unless this was somehow about you, Mrs. Matthews. About me? I don't even know Ava. No, but Richard Parker knows you. You're his daughter. And 3 months ago, right after the SecureNet breach, someone started making inquiries about you at this hospital, asking questions about your schedule, your marriage, your life. Ice flooded my veins. Someone was investigating me? We pulled the security footage. Want to guess who we saw in the hospital cafeteria, watching you from across the room? He didn't need to answer. I already knew. But why? I whispered. Why, after 30 years, would he come back? Why watch me? Why use my husband's identity? Why sleep with a woman and tell her he's Ethan Matthews? What is he trying to do? Detective Rivera closed the folder slowly. Mrs. Matthews, I think he's trying to send you a message. I think this whole thing, Ava, the baby, the dramatic reveal in your hospital, was orchestrated. He wanted you to find out. He wanted you to discover he was alive. But why? Ethan demanded. What does he want from Claire? The detective pulled out one last document. It was a property deed. 10 days ago, Margaret Parker's old house, the one Claire inherited, was broken into. Nothing was stolen according to the police report, but the house was thoroughly searched. Every floorboard pulled up, every wall cavity checked, basement completely torn apart. I felt sick. I haven't been to that house in months. It's just sitting empty. I've been meaning to sell it, but haven't gotten around to it. I don't think whoever broke in was looking to steal anything, Mrs. Matthews. I think they were looking for something specific, something they believed was hidden in that house, something valuable enough to orchestrate this entire elaborate scheme to get your attention. What could possibly be worth all this? I asked. Detective Rivera's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his face went pale. Oh, no. What? What is it? My partner just texted. They found Richard Parker's car abandoned at a bus station in Pittsburgh. Inside the glove compartment was a note addressed to Claire Matthews. He looked up at me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite identify. Fear? Pity? What does the note say? I demanded. The detective's phone buzzed again. This time, it was a photo. He turned the screen toward me. The note was written in shaky handwriting, as if the person writing it was ill or very old. Claire, my beautiful daughter, I'm dying. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, maybe 3 months left. I know you hate me, and you should, but your mother is alive. She's been in hiding for 30 years, and she's in terrible danger. The people who are after her will come for you next if you don't find her first. The key to everything is in the house where you grew up. Not Margaret's house, the one before that. The house on Maple Street, the house we lived in before the accident. You don't remember it because you were so young, but it's still there. Go to the basement. Behind the water heater, there's a loose brick. Behind that brick is everything you need to know, and everything that will save your mother's life. I'm sorry for everything. I never wanted to be a coward, but I was. Don't make my mistake. Save her, Claire. Save your mother. You only have 48 hours before they find her. I'm sorry. I love you. I always did. Dad. The room spun. Ethan grabbed my arm to steady me. This is insane, he said. This has to be a trap. Claire, you can't seriously... But I was already standing, already moving toward the door. What's the address? I demanded. Maple Street, where? I don't remember any house on Maple Street. Detective Rivera was already typing on his computer. Give me a second. Okay, here. County records show a Richard and Elizabeth Parker owned a property at 47 Maple Street in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania from 1988 to 1993. The property was sold to a real estate development company after the accident, but the sale fell through and it's been abandoned ever since. It's scheduled for demolition next week. Next week? The timing couldn't be coincidence. Claire, this is obviously a setup, Ethan said desperately. He's luring you into a trap. Then why give her only 48 hours? Detective Rivera countered. Why the urgency? If this was a trap, wouldn't he want her to come alone, quietly, without police involvement? Instead, he sent this note knowing we'd find it, knowing I'd be involved. Unless he wants the police there, Ethan said darkly. Unless whatever is in that house is going to... His phone rang. He looked at the caller ID and frowned. It's my office. I should... He answered. Hello? Yes, this is Ethan Matthews. What? What? When did this happen? We watched as the color drained from his face. I understand. Yes. No, I'm at the hospital with my wife. There's a situation. Yes, a police situation. I'll come in first thing tomorrow. Thank you for calling. He hung up and looked at me with absolute horror in his eyes. That was HR. Someone filed a life insurance claim this morning, a $5 million policy. The beneficiary is listed as Ava Thompson. The deceased... He could barely get the words out. The deceased is listed as me, Ethan Matthews. According to the claim, I died yesterday in a car accident. Detective Rivera was already on his phone, barking orders. I need units dispatched to 47 Maple Street, Harrisburg, now, and get me everything you can find on Elizabeth Parker's last known location. Move! He turned to us, his face grim. We're going to that house, right now, all of us, because I have a very bad feeling that your 48 hours just became 48 minutes. The drive to Harrisburg took 90 minutes, but it felt like 9 hours. Detective Rivera drove with his sirens on, weaving through traffic while backup units were dispatched ahead. Ethan sat in the back seat beside me, his hand gripping mine so tightly my fingers went numb. This is insane, he kept muttering. This is absolutely insane. But I couldn't speak. My mind was racing with impossible questions. My mother was alive. For 30 years she'd been alive and I didn't know. Why would she disappear? Why would my father fake his death? And who are these mysterious they that my father's note mentioned? The people who were supposedly after her. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Don't trust the detective, come alone. I showed it to Rivera. He glanced at it and his jaw tightened. That's exactly what I'd expect. They're trying to isolate you. Don't respond, don't acknowledge it. But 2 minutes later, another text. Your mother is in the basement right now. She's hurt. If you bring police, they'll kill her before you get there. Please, Claire, I'm begging you, come alone. My heart hammered. How do I know this isn't my father texting me? You don't, Rivera said. That's the point. They're playing psychological warfare. A third text. You have 10 minutes to decide. After that, she dies. Detective, can you trace these messages? Ethan demanded. Already trying. They're bouncing through multiple proxy servers. Whoever this is, they're sophisticated. We pulled on to Maple Street 8 minutes later. It was a forgotten corner of Harrisburg. Abandoned row houses, broken windows, graffiti-covered walls. Number 47 sat at the end of the street. a 3-story Victorian nightmare that looked like it might collapse if you breathed on it too hard. 2 police units were already there, officers positioned around the perimeter. Rivera pulled up and immediately started issuing orders. No one goes in until we clear it. I want thermal imaging. My phone rang. Not a text this time, an actual call. Same unknown number. Don't answer that, Rivera said sharply, but I was already pressing the button. Hello? The voice on the other end was female, weak, gasping. Claire? Baby, is that you? My entire body went rigid. I knew that voice. I knew it from somewhere deep in my childhood, buried under decades of forced amnesia and trauma. Mom? Claire, listen to me very carefully. The woman's voice was ragged with pain. They're here, in the house. 3 of them. They're looking for the documents your father hid. They think I know where they are. But I don't. I swear I don't. They've already... She broke off with a cry of pain. Mom, I screamed. Claire, you need to find those documents before they do. It's not just about us anymore. Those documents prove everything, the fraud, the murders, the conspiracy that goes all the way to the top of Sterling Heights Insurance. If they destroy those documents, 30 years of crimes disappear, and we all die for nothing. Please, baby, save the documents, save yourself, forget about me. I'm not leaving you. Tears poured down my face. Where are you in the house? Basement. They locked me in the old coal cellar. But Claire, don't come in through the front. They're waiting. There's a bulkhead door in the back, behind the overgrown weeds. It leads directly to the basement. Your father showed it to you once when you were little, made you memorize it in case of emergencies. Do you remember? I closed my eyes and reached back through decades. A flash of memory. A little girl's hand in her daddy's hand, him pointing at a metal door hidden under vines. This is our secret escape route, Princess. If anything bad ever happens, you run to this door and you hide in the basement until I come get you. I remember, I whispered. Claire, no! Detective Rivera tried to grab my phone, but I pulled away. Mom, I'm coming, hold on. I love you, baby. I'm so sorry for everything. The line went dead. I looked at Detective Rivera, at Ethan, at the assembled police officers. Then I did the stupidest, most reckless thing I'd ever done in my life. I ran. Claire! Ethan's scream echoed behind me, but I was already sprinting around the side of the house, through the overgrown yard, searching desperately for that bulkhead door. The police were shouting, running after me, but I was faster, fueled by adrenaline and desperation. There, hidden under 30 years of ivy and weeds, almost invisible, the metal bulkhead door, rusted and covered in filth. I grabbed the handles and pulled. It didn't budge. Locked or just rusted shut, I couldn't tell. I pulled harder, throwing my entire body weight backward. Claire, stop! Rivera was right behind me now, his gun drawn. You don't know what's down there. My mother is down there, I screamed, and pulled one final time with every ounce of strength I had. The door burst open with a shriek of protesting metal. Darkness yawned below, stone steps leading down into absolute blackness. And from that darkness came a sound that turned my blood to ice. A woman's scream cut suddenly short. Then silence. I didn't think. I just moved. Down the steps, into the darkness, my phone flashlight barely cutting through the gloom. Behind me, I heard Rivera shouting into his radio, heard footsteps thundering, but I was already at the bottom of the stairs, already in the basement. The smell hit me first, mold, decay, and something else, something metallic, blood. My light swept across the basement. It was exactly as my fragmented childhood memories suggested. Support pillars, an old water heater in the corner, boxes and debris scattered everywhere, and there, on the far side, a wooden door that must lead to the coal cellar. I ran to it, tried the handle, locked. Mom! I pounded on the door. Mom, are you in there? No answer. Claire, get back! Rivera was down the stairs now, his flashlight beam joining mine. 2 other officers right behind him, but I was already kicking at the door, the nurse in me overridden completely by the daughter. The wood was old, weakened by decades of moisture. On the third kick, it splintered inward. The coal cellar was tiny, maybe 6 feet by 6 feet, and on the floor, crumpled and bloody, was a woman. She was in her 60s, gray-haired, her face bruised and swollen, but even through the injuries, I could see it, the resemblance. She had my nose, my chin, my eyes. "Mom," I whispered, dropping to my knees beside her. Her eyes fluttered open. When she saw me, tears spilled down her cheeks. "Claire, my baby, you came." "Of course I came. I'm here. You're going to be okay." I was already assessing her injuries with professional detachment. Broken ribs, possible internal bleeding, severe bruising. "Detective, I need an ambulance now!" But Rivera wasn't looking at her. His flashlight was trained on something else, something behind the water heater, the loose brick my father had mentioned. Rivera moved toward it, holstering his gun and pulling on gloves. He carefully removed the brick. Behind it was a hollow space, and inside that space was a metal lockbox, about the size of a shoebox. He pulled it out. It wasn't locked. The lock had been smashed, as if someone had tried to open it but been interrupted. Rivera lifted the lid. Inside were documents, hundreds of pages of documents, insurance policies, bank statements, ledgers written in careful handwriting, and photographs, dozens of photographs of men in suits shaking hands, signing papers. "Oh my God," Rivera breathed. "This is... Claire, these are the stolen insurance settlements your father was supposedly investigating. These documents prove that Sterling Heights Insurance wasn't a victim of fraud. They were running the fraud. This is a conspiracy that involves..." He flipped through the papers, his face going whiter with each page. Jesus Christ. The CEO, the entire executive board, 3 state insurance commissioners, and... He stopped, his hand trembling. "And Senator Mitchell Carver." The name meant nothing to me, but Rivera looked like he'd been struck by lightning. "Carver is running for president," he said quietly. "He's leading in every poll. If these documents become public, he'll be destroyed," finished a new voice from the darkness. We all spun around. Standing at the bottom of the basement stairs was a man in an expensive suit. He was maybe 50, silver-haired, with the kind of face that smiled in campaign commercials. Behind him were 2 other men, large, muscular, with the unmistakable bearing of professional security, or professional killers. "Detective Rivera," the man said smoothly. "I'm Special Agent Thomas Wright, FBI. I'm going to need you to hand over that lockbox. This is now a matter of national security." Rivera's hand moved toward his gun. "Show me your badge." Wright pulled out credentials. They looked real. Rivera examined them carefully, then looked at the 2 men behind Wright. "And them?" "Federal Protective Detail. We've been tracking Richard Parker for 18 months. These documents are classified evidence in an ongoing investigation." "Classified," Rivera repeated slowly, "into Senator Carver." Wright's smile didn't waver. "Into various matters. I'm not at liberty to discuss details, but what I can tell you is that you're all in terrible danger by being here. Richard Parker was working with foreign intelligence to blackmail American officials. These documents contain false information planted to destabilize the upcoming election. They cannot be allowed to enter public circulation." "That's bullshit," my mother croaked from the floor. Everyone's attention snapped to her. She was trying to sit up, blood on her lips. "Those documents are real. Every transaction, every signature, every murder. They killed 6 people to cover up that fraud. They killed the real Richard Parker, a homeless man they dressed in my husband's clothes and burned. In that car. They would have killed Richard too, but he ran. He's been running for 30 years. Wright's expression didn't change. "Ma'am, you've clearly been through severe trauma. You need medical attention and psychiatric evaluation." "I need," my mother said, her voice getting stronger despite her injuries, "to tell my daughter the truth. Claire, your father wasn't a criminal. He was an investigator for Sterling Heights Insurance. They hired him to look into some suspicious claims. What he found was that the company itself was creating fake policies, fake deaths, collecting millions in fraudulent payouts. When he tried to report it, they tried to kill us both. We went into hiding, but they found us. The car crash was supposed to kill us all, you included. But your grandmother got you out of the car just in time. She saved your life. Richard and I, we made a choice. We let the world think we were dead so you could live. Then why come back now? I demanded. Why after 30 years? Because, Wright said, his voice suddenly colder, Richard Parker made a very stupid mistake. He got sick, cancer, and when dying men get nostalgic, they get sloppy. He started trying to contact you, Claire. He started asking questions. He used someone's identity. Unfortunately for him, someone who worked at the very company he'd been running from, and that triggered a flag in our system. Your system, Rivera said slowly. You're not FBI, are you? Wright's smile finally faded. I'm whoever I need to be to protect America's interests. Now give me the lockbox and everyone walks away from this. Refuse and... He glanced at the two men behind him. Both had their hands inside their jackets now. Well, abandoned houses in bad neighborhoods. Terrible things happen in places like this. Drug deals gone wrong, squatters who don't survive the winter. It would be tragic if an entire police investigation team disappeared in such a location. Rivera's hand was definitely on his gun now. There are 3 units outside. Not anymore, Wright said. My associates are very efficient. You have 10 seconds to give me that lockbox, detective. 10, 9, 8. My mother grabbed my hand. Claire, run. There's another way out. Through the coal chute. You can fit. Take the documents and run. I'm not leaving you again, I said. You have to. Claire, you're the only one who can... 7, 6. Detective Rivera made his decision. In one smooth motion, he threw the lockbox to me. Go! I caught it on pure instinct. My mother was pushing me toward a dark corner of the coal cellar. There, the chute, climb. 5, 4. I saw it. A narrow shaft leading upward, just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. I grabbed the lockbox and started climbing, my feet scrambling for purchase on the old metal chute. 3, 2. Claire, my mother called up to me, her voice filled with a lifetime of love and regret. Live, baby, live. 1. Gunshots exploded. In the basement below. I screamed and almost fell, but hands... My mother's hands pushed me up from below one final time. Go, go, go. I climbed like my life depended on it, because it did. The metal chute was rusted and sharp, tearing at my clothes, my skin, but I didn't stop. Behind me, more gunshots, shouting, the sound of a fight, and then suddenly I was out. The chute opened onto the side of the house, hidden behind bushes. I tumbled out onto frozen ground, the lockbox clutched to my chest, and I ran. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Real ones this time, getting closer. I ran toward them, screaming for help. The lockbox clutched to my chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. Because it was. It was the truth. And people had died for it. As police cars screeched to a stop around me, as officers jumped out with weapons drawn and rushed toward the house, I collapsed on the sidewalk and sobbed. My mother, Detective Rivera, the other officers, they were all in there, with those men, those killers, and I didn't know if any of them would come out alive. The next 3 hours were a blur of flashing lights, shouting agents, and endless questions I couldn't answer because I was in shock. They wrapped me in a foil blanket even though I wasn't cold. They tried to take the lockbox from me. I wouldn't let go. Ma'am, we need that for evidence. No. My voice was hoarse from screaming. Not until I know what happened in that house. Not until I know if my mother is alive. They couldn't force it from me. Not with news vans already pulling up, cameras starting to roll. Someone had leaked the situation, probably someone inside the department who realized this was bigger than a random shooting. Finally, after what felt like hours, I saw them bringing out stretchers. I lunged forward. Officers held me back. "Let me go! I'm a nurse! Let me see them!" The first stretcher carried Detective Rivera. His shoulder was bloody, but he was conscious, talking to the EMTs. Relief flooded through me. The second stretcher carried one of the other officers. He wasn't moving. The third and fourth carried the two men who'd been with Special Agent Wright, both in body bags. And the fifth... "Mom!" I broke free from the officers holding me and ran to the stretcher. She was alive, barely. Blood everywhere, oxygen mask on her face, but her eyes were open. Her hand reached for mine. I grabbed it, running alongside the stretcher as they loaded her into the ambulance. "I'm coming with you," I told the EMTs. It wasn't a request. They didn't argue. In the ambulance, as they worked to stabilize her, she kept trying to talk around the oxygen mask. "Claire. Right. He got away. Don't talk. Save your strength." "No, listen." She pulled the mask aside, gasping. "He has copies of the documents. Insurance policy. Mitchell Carver. Your name." "What? What about my name?" "You're the beneficiary." Her eyes were starting to close. $3 million. Life insurance. On Ethan. If he dies, you get everything. But Wright switched it. He changed the beneficiary to Ava Thompson. My blood ran cold. The insurance claim Ethan got today. The one saying he died. It's a frame. They're going to kill him. Make it look like you did it. For the money. Claire, you have to... Her eyes rolled back. The heart monitor screamed. "She's crashing!" The EMT shouted. "Starting compressions!" I watched, helpless, as they fought to save my mother's life for the second time. They stabilized her at the hospital, barely. She was in surgery for 6 hours. Internal bleeding, punctured lung, fractured skull. The doctors said it was a miracle she survived this long. I sat in the waiting room, still clutching that damned lockbox, and called Ethan. He answered on the first ring. "Claire! Thank God, where are you? What happened? The news is saying there was a shooting, multiple casualties." Ethan listened to me very carefully. "Where are you right now?" "I'm at home. The police told me to wait here until they could take my statement about, get out of the house right now." "What? Claire, what's..." "Right now, Ethan. Get in your car and drive to the nearest police station. Don't go anywhere else. Don't stop for anything. And call your life insurance company. Ask them about any claims filed in your name." "Claire, you're scaring me." "Oh, good. You should be scared. Someone filed a claim saying you died. Someone changed the beneficiary on your policy to Ava Thompson, and I think they're planning to make that claim real." Silence on the other end. Then, "Oh my God. There are people who will kill to keep certain documents from becoming public. Documents I have right now, and they've already proven they're willing to murder anyone in their way. So please, please get to a police station. I'm already in my car. Claire, what about you? Where are you?" "I'm at Jefferson Hospital. My mother is in surgery. I'll be safe here. There are cops everywhere. But Ethan, there's something else." "Do you trust me?" "Of course I do." "Then I need you to do something that's going to sound insane. I need you to take out the maximum life insurance policy you can on yourself. Today. Right now, as soon as the office opens tomorrow morning. And I need you to make sure the beneficiary is me. Verified, confirmed in writing." "Claire, why would I..." "Because if these people think there's already a huge policy on your life with me as the beneficiary, they have no reason to kill you and frame me. The fraud would be too obvious. But if the only policy on you is the one they've doctored with Ava as the beneficiary, then your death looks like I killed you for money and tried to frame them for it. Do you understand?" A long pause. "That's actually brilliant and terrifying. Claire, who the hell are we dealing with?" People who've been running a multi-million-dollar insurance fraud for 30 years. People who've killed to protect it. People who have connections all the way to a presidential candidate. Jesus Christ. Yeah, so please be careful. And Ethan, I love you. I love you too. Be safe. I hung up and finally allowed myself to look at what was inside the lockbox. The documents were meticulously organized, dating back to 1989, policy after policy, all written by Sterling Heights Insurance, all for people who had mysteriously died within months of taking out the policies. Except these weren't mysterious deaths when you looked at the details my father had compiled. James Morrison, $500,000 policy, died in car accident 1 month after being diagnosed with terminal cancer. Except the autopsy showed he had no cancer. Medical records falsified. Sandra Chen, $750,000 policy, died of sudden heart attack at age 34. No previous heart issues. Except toxicology showed lethal levels of digoxin, a heart medication she wasn't prescribed. Marcus Williams, $1.2 million policy, died in house fire. Except fire marshal's report, buried in the file, showed evidence of accelerant and forced entry, on and on. Dozens of cases, millions of dollars. And at the bottom of the box, a ledger showing where the money went. Shell companies, offshore accounts. And then, starting in 2010, political campaign contributions. Hundreds of thousands of dollars flowing from those shell companies to one name, Mitchell Carver, the man who was currently leading every presidential poll. The man who, according to these documents, had been taking blood money for 15 years. My phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Ms. Matthews? The voice was unfamiliar, male. Professional. Who is this? My name is David Chen. I'm an investigative journalist with the Washington Post. I've been working on a story about insurance fraud in Pennsylvania for 2 years. I understand you might have some documents that relate to my investigation. How did you get this number? A man named Richard Parker contacted me 3 days ago. He said if anything happened to him, I should contact you. Ms. Matthews, I know you're scared. I know you don't know who to trust. But I've been investigating Senator Carver for 18 months. I know about Sterling Heights Insurance. I know about the murders. I know about all of it. But I can't prove any of it. The sources who tried to help me are all dead or missing. You have the proof, don't you? The documents Richard Parker spent 30 years hiding. My hand tightened on the lockbox. If I give these to you, what happens? I publish the story. Tomorrow morning, front page. Everything. The fraud, the murders, Carver's involvement, all of it. It'll be the biggest political scandal in decades. Carver's campaign will be destroyed. Sterling Heights Insurance will be investigated by every federal agency, and the people trying to kill you and your family will have no reason to anymore, because the secret will be out. And if I don't give them to you, then those people will keep hunting you. They'll kill everyone you love, and eventually they'll get the documents and destroy them, and Mitchell Carver will become President of the United States, a president owned by murderers. I close my eyes. How do I know you're really a journalist? How do I know this isn't another trick? You don't. But Ms. Matthews, ask yourself this. If I wanted to kill you and take those documents, wouldn't I have done it already? I know exactly where you are. Jefferson Hospital, surgical waiting room, 3rd floor. You're wearing blue scrubs with blood on them, holding a metal lockbox, and you've got a cut over your left eyebrow from when you climbed through that coal chute. I looked up sharply, scanning the waiting room. And there, standing by the elevator, was a man in his 40s, Asian, wearing glasses and a rumpled suit. He was holding up his phone, showing me that he was the one calling. He smiled gently. May I sit down? I nodded slowly. He crossed the waiting room and sat 3 chairs away, close enough to talk, far enough to not seem threatening. My father was James Chen, he said quietly. He was a data analyst for Sterling Heights Insurance. In 2003, he found irregularities in the company's payout records. He tried to report it internally. 3 days later, he died of a sudden heart attack. I was 15. I didn't understand what happened until years later when I became a journalist and started looking into his death. That's when I found the pattern. Dozens of people like my father, like your parents, who tried to expose the fraud and ended up dead. I'm sorry, I whispered. Me too. But Claire, can I call you Claire? We have a chance to make this right. We have a chance to make sure no one else's father dies for discovering the truth. We have a chance to stop these people. But I need those documents, and we need to move fast because the moment they realize you're not dead, they're going to come at you with everything they have. They already know I'm not dead. They're probably watching the hospital right now. Probably, he agreed, which is why I have a photographer and a lawyer waiting downstairs. We're going to photograph every single page of those documents right here, right now, in the hospital cafeteria with dozens of witnesses around. Then we're going to give the originals to the police, not just any police, but directly to the FBI field office, hand-delivered by you in front of cameras. Once those documents are photographed and in official custody, you're no longer a liability to be eliminated. You're a witness to be protected. It made sense. It was smart. It was exactly what my father would have wanted. He'd spent 30 years keeping these documents safe, waiting for the right moment to expose the truth. This was that moment. Okay, I said, let's do it. 2 hours later, every page had been photographed, verified, and backed up to 3 separate secure servers. The originals were in an evidence bag, signed and sealed, ready to be delivered to the FBI. David Chen was typing furiously on his laptop, putting together the story that would destroy a presidential campaign and expose decades of murder, and I was finally able to breathe. The story hit the Washington Post website at 6 a.m. the next morning. By 7 a.m., it was on every news channel in America. By 8 a.m., FBI agents were raiding Sterling Heights Insurance headquarters. By 9 a.m., Senator Mitchell Carver held a press conference denying everything, but his hands were shaking and his eyes kept darting to his lawyers. By 10 a.m., 3 members of Sterling Heights Executive Board had been arrested. By noon, Carver suspended his presidential campaign. By 2 p.m., trading in Sterling Heights insurance stock had been halted. And by 4 p.m., I was sitting in my mother's hospital room, holding her hand as she watched the news coverage from her bed. She'd made it through surgery. The doctors said she'd recover, though it would take months. But she was alive. She was here. After 30 years, I had my mother back. Your father would be so proud of you, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Is he really dying? I asked. The cancer? She nodded. Stage 4, maybe weeks left, the doctors said. He's in a hospice in Pittsburgh under a false name. He didn't want you to see him like that, sick, weak. He wanted you to remember him as he was. I barely remember him at all, I said. I was 5. Then remember him like this, she said, squeezing my hand. Remember that he spent 30 years running, hiding, living in fear, all to keep you safe. Remember that even when he was dying, his last act was bringing you those documents so you could finish what he started. Remember that he loved you enough to become a ghost so you could live. A nurse knocked on the door. Mrs. Matthews, there's someone here to see you. Ethan walked in and I burst into tears. He rushed to me, pulling me into his arms. It's over, he whispered into my hair. It's really over. But it wasn't quite over. 3 days later, the police found Special Agent Thomas Wright, whose real name turned out to be Thomas Brennan, former CIA operative turned private security contractor. He'd been hired by Sterling Heights to contain the situation. He was arrested trying to board a private plane to Venezuela. 1 week later, Ava Thompson came to visit me at the hospital. She was nervous, her baby wrapped in a blanket in her arms. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said quietly. I was stupid and selfish. I believed a man who told me pretty lies. But I need you to know, I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted any of this. I looked at her baby. looked at this innocent child who had been born into such chaos. What will you do now? I'm moving back to Ohio, where my family is. They'll help me raise him, and I'm returning the insurance money, what's left of it after the fraud charges are sorted out. I don't want blood money. What's his name? I asked, nodding at the baby. Michael, after my grandfather. I reached out and gently touched the baby's tiny hand. He grabbed my finger with surprising strength. "Hi, Michael," I whispered. "None of this was your fault, you know that. You're just a baby. You get to start fresh." Ava started crying. Thank you for not hating me." "I don't hate you," I said honestly. "You were a victim too. We all were." 2 weeks after the story broke, I got a call from a hospice in Pittsburgh. "Ms. Matthews, this is Riverview Hospice. We have a patient here who's been asking for you. He doesn't have much time left. If you want to see him, it should be soon." I drove to Pittsburgh that same day. Ethan came with me. The man in the hospice bed looked nothing like the handsome young father in my fragmented childhood memories. Cancer had ravaged him, left him a skeletal shadow. But when he saw me walk through the door, his eyes, still that same bright blue I remembered, lit up with joy. "Claire," he breathed. "My beautiful girl, you came." I sat beside his bed and took his hand. It felt like paper, like he might crumble to dust at any moment. "I came," I said. "I wanted to say thank you for keeping me safe, for those documents, for everything." "Did they catch them?" he asked. "Did the story work?" It worked. Carver's campaign is destroyed. Sterling Heights is being dismantled. 17 people have been arrested so far, with more coming. The FBI says it's the biggest insurance fraud case in American history. He smiled, and for just a moment, I saw the father I'd lost. Good. And your mother? She's recovering. She's going to be okay. I'm glad." His eyes were closing. "I'm so tired, Claire. I've been running for so long. I think I'm ready to stop now." "You can rest now," I told him. "It's over. You did it. You won." "No," he whispered. "You won. You finished what I started. You were always braver than me, even when you were little. You were always the hero of this story, not me." He died 3 hours later, holding my hand, with my mother on a video call so she could say goodbye. The insurance payout from Ethan's fraudulent death claim was reversed, but Sterling Heights Insurance, what was left of it after the investigations, settled with us for damages, something about emotional distress, defamation, identity theft, and attempted murder. The settlement was $8 million. We donated half to a fund for families of fraud victims. The other half, well, Ethan and I had always talked about starting a foundation, a scholarship fund for nursing students. We named it after my father, the Richard Parker Memorial Scholarship for Healthcare Heroes. My mother recovered. She came to live with us while she healed, both physically and emotionally. 30 years of hiding, of looking over her shoulder, of living in fear. It takes time to come back from that, but slowly, day by day, she did. One evening, about 3 months after everything happened, we were all sitting in the living room, me, Ethan, my mom, when she suddenly said, "I think I'd like to learn to paint." "Paint?" I asked. "Yes. I always wanted to paint when I was young, but there was never time. And then after everything, I was too busy surviving. But now..." She looked around our living room, at the life we'd built, at the safety we'd found. "Now I have time. Now I can learn to do things just because I want to, not because I'm running." So we signed her up for painting classes, and you know what? She was terrible at it. Absolutely awful. Her trees looked like angry broccoli and her landscapes looked like abstract disasters. But she loved every second of it. That's what winning looks like, I realized. Not revenge, not justice, though those things mattered. Winning looks like my mother painting terrible artwork and laughing about it. Winning looks like Ethan and me finally feeling safe enough to talk about having children. Winning looks like sleeping through the night without nightmares. Senator Mitchell Carver was indicted on 47 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. His trial is set for next year. They're saying he'll get 20 years minimum. Sterling Heights Insurance officially declared bankruptcy 6 months after the story broke. The building was sold, the assets liquidated, the victims' families compensated, and me? I went back to work at the hospital, back to my emergency room, my patients, my routine. But everything was different now, because I'd learned something important. I was stronger than I ever knew. I was braver than I believed. And when the worst possible thing happened, when my whole world exploded, I didn't break. I fought back, and I won. 1 year later, I stood at my father's grave, a real grave this time, not a fake one marking a homeless man's body. The headstone was simple but elegant, carved from gray granite that caught the morning light. Richard Parker, 1961, 2025 beloved husband, father, hero. He ran so she could stand still. My mother stood beside me, her arm linked through mine. In her other hand, she held a canvas, one of her terrible paintings. This one was supposed to be a sunset over the Philadelphia skyline, but honestly, looked more like someone had spilled orange and purple paint on a canvas and called it abstract art. He would have loved it, I told her, squeezing her arm gently. She laughed, that beautiful sound I'd gone 30 years without hearing. He would have lied and said it was beautiful, hung it on the wall and bragged to everyone that his wife was an artist. That too, I smiled. That's exactly what he would have done. The cemetery was peaceful this morning. Spring had finally arrived in Pennsylvania, bringing with it cherry blossoms and the kind of fresh air that makes you believe in new beginnings. Birds sang in the trees, overhead, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear children playing. Life going on. Always going on. You know what I remember most about him? My mother said softly, her eyes distant. Not the big things, not the day he proposed or our wedding or even the day you were born, though those were beautiful. I remember Tuesday mornings. Every Tuesday he'd wake up early and make me pancakes. Terrible pancakes, burned on one side, raw in the middle. But he'd serve them with such pride, like he was presenting me with a gourmet meal. I'd never heard this story before. Every Tuesday? Every single Tuesday for the entire 8 years we were together before. Before everything happened, even when he was exhausted from working late, even when we were arguing about something stupid, Tuesday morning, there would be terrible pancakes. She wiped away a tear, smiling through it. After he died, I couldn't eat pancakes for 20 years. Couldn't even look at them. But last month, I made some for breakfast. And you know what? They were just as terrible as his. We both laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet cemetery. He'd be so proud of you, Claire, she continued, not just for what you did with those documents, but for who you are. The nurse who helps people every day. The woman who showed mercy to Ava even after everything. The daughter who gave me a second chance even though I'd been gone your entire adult life. You didn't leave me, Mom, I said firmly. You saved me. There's a difference. She pulled me into a hug, and we stood there for a long moment, two women who'd lost 30 years but were determined to make the most of every day they had left. Ethan was waiting in the car with our daughter, yes, daughter, Emma Rose Matthews, 3 months old with Ethan's dark hair and my blue eyes. She was sleeping peacefully in her car seat, completely unaware that her grandfather had been a fugitive, that her grandmother had been in hiding, that her parents had almost been murdered over insurance documents. She'd never have to know any of that darkness. She'd grow up safe, loved, free to be whoever she wanted to be. No running, no hiding, no looking over her shoulder. That was my father's legacy. That was what he died for. As we approached the car, Ethan stepped out and pulled me into his arms. How are you holding up? I'm okay, I said, and I meant it. Actually, I'm better than okay. I'm grateful for all of it, even the painful parts, because they led me here. He kissed my forehead. You're the strongest person I know, Claire Matthews. Second strongest, I corrected, nodding toward my mother. She survived 30 years of this. My mother was already in the back seat, cooing at Emma, her face transformed by grandmother love. Watching them together, 3 generations of women who'd survived the unthinkable, I felt something shift in my chest, a weight I'd been carrying my entire life finally lifting. As Ethan drove us home, my phone buzzed. A text from David Chen, the journalist whose story had changed everything. "Hey Claire, my editor wants to know if you'd be interested in writing a book about everything that happened. First-person account. Publishing house is offering a substantial advance. Could be really big. Interested?" I looked at my mother in the back seat, at Ethan beside me, at baby Emma sleeping peacefully. I typed back, "Thanks, David. I appreciate the offer, but no, I'm done being part of that story. I've got a new story to live now, but give my regards to your editor." His response came immediately. "Understood. For what it's worth, you're the hero of the best story I've ever covered. Take care of yourself, Claire. You deserve all the happiness in the world." I smiled and put my phone away. The Richard Parker Memorial Scholarship for Healthcare Heroes awarded its first 10 scholarships in September. The ceremony was held at Philadelphia General Hospital, the same hospital where everything had started. I stood at the podium, looking out at the 10 young nursing students who were receiving full scholarships for their education. Their faces were bright with hope and determination. They reminded me of myself at that age, before I knew about conspiracies and betrayals, when I still believed the world was basically good. Maybe they'd keep that innocence longer than I had. I hope so. "My father spent the last 30 years of his life running," I told them. "Running from people who wanted to silence the truth, running to protect the people he loved, running because he made the courageous choice to expose corruption even though it cost him everything." I paused, gathering my thoughts. In the front row, my mother sat holding Emma. Ethan was beside them, his hand on my mother's shoulder. My family, my second chance. "These scholarships aren't about my father's mistakes," I continued. "They're about his choice to do the right thing even when it was the hardest thing. That's what nursing is about, too. Every day, you'll face situations where the easy choice and the right choice aren't the same thing. Every day, you'll have to decide what kind of nurse, what kind of person you want to be." I looked at each of their faces. My father taught me that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves. It's about standing up for the truth even when the whole world seems to be telling you to stay quiet. One of the scholarship recipients, a young woman named Jessica, who reminded me so much of my younger self, raised her hand. "Mrs. Matthews, how did you find the strength to keep going when everything was falling apart?" I smiled. I didn't feel strong. I felt terrified. But I had people who believed in me. Detective Rivera, who threw me those documents and told me to run. My mother, who pushed me up that coal chute even while bullets were flying. My husband, who stood by me even when his own life was in danger. David Chen, the journalist who helped me expose the truth. And my father, who spent 30 years keeping those documents safe so that one day someone could finish what he started. I paused. You don't need to be strong alone. That's the secret. Surround yourself with people who make you braver. Be the kind of person who makes others braver. That's how we change the world, not as individuals, but as a community of people who refuse to accept injustice. The audience applauded. After the ceremony, several of the scholarship recipients came up to thank me personally. Jessica, the young woman who'd asked the question, had tears in her eyes. "My mom died 3 years ago from cancer," she told me quietly. The insurance company denied her treatment claims, said it was a pre-existing condition even though it wasn't. We couldn't afford the treatment without insurance. She died 6 months after diagnosis. When I heard about your story, about what Sterling Heights Insurance was doing, it made me realize Mom wasn't the only one. There were probably hundreds of people like her. Your father's documents proved it. You proved it. Thank you for not staying quiet. I hugged her tightly. I'm so sorry about your mom, but she'd be so proud of you. You're going to be an amazing nurse." "I'm going to be the kind of nurse who fights for her patients," Jessica said fiercely. "The kind who doesn't back down when insurance companies try to deny care. The kind like you." As she walked away to join the other recipients, I felt my mother's hand on my shoulder. "Your father would have loved this," she said softly. "Watching you turn his greatest nightmare into something beautiful. Watching you help young people who remind you of yourself. This is how we heal, Claire. Not by forgetting the pain, but by transforming it into something that helps others." Detective Marcus Rivera stopped by our house one evening in March. He'd fully recovered from his gunshot wound and had been promoted to lieutenant, but he wasn't there on official business. "I wanted you to have this," he said, handing me a framed photograph. It was a picture of all of us from that night, taken by one of the crime scene photographers. Me, covered in dust and blood, clutching the lockbox. Rivera, his shoulder bandaged, looking exhausted but determined. My mother on a stretcher, her hand reaching for mine. And in the background, police cars and ambulances, their lights painting everything in red and blue. It should have been a horrible picture, a reminder of trauma. But when I looked at it, all I saw was survival, courage, love. "We made it," Rivera said simply. "All of us. Against impossible odds, we made it. That's worth remembering." "Thank you," I said, my eyes misting, "for everything, for believing me, for protecting my mother, for being willing to risk your life for the truth." He shrugged, but I could see he was touched. "It's what we're supposed to do. Doesn't always work out this well, though. Usually the bad guys win and good people die and the truth stays buried. But not this time. This time, we won. And I wanted to make sure you never forgot that." After he left, I hung the picture in our hallway. Not hidden away, but right there where I'd see it every day. A reminder that darkness doesn't always win. That sometimes, if you're brave enough and stubborn enough and lucky enough, you can stand against impossible evil and survive. More than survive. Thrive. Emma took her first steps on a Tuesday morning. Of course it was a Tuesday. My mother was visiting and she burst into tears when Emma toddled 3 wobbly steps from the couch to my waiting arms. "Richard would have given anything to see this," she whispered. "He can see it," I said, catching Emma and spinning her around as she giggled. "Wherever he is, I think he can see it, and I think he's smiling." Later that morning, after my mother had left and Emma was down for her nap, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee and my laptop. I'd been thinking about David Chen's offer for months. Not the book. I still didn't want to write a book. But maybe something else. I opened a new document and started typing. "Dear future nursing students, if you're reading this, you're probably one of the recipients of the Richard Parker Memorial Scholarship. First, congratulations. Second, I want to tell you a story, not about insurance fraud or conspiracies or dramatic basement shootouts, but about what comes after the crisis ends, after the danger passes, after the news cameras go away. What then? How do you rebuild your life after it's been shattered? How do you learn to trust again after betrayal? How do you find peace after trauma? The answer is slowly, carefully, with help, with grace for yourself on the bad days, with celebration for the small victories on the good days. You're going into a profession where you'll see people at their absolute worst moments. You'll see trauma and pain and death. You'll see families torn apart. You'll see injustice and suffering. And it will be tempting to become cynical, to protect yourself by not caring too much. Don't do that. Care. Care deeply. Care even when it hurts. Because your caring might be the only light someone sees in their darkest moment. Your kindness might be the thing that gives them hope. Your courage to do the right thing, even when it's hard, might save not just their life, but their faith in humanity. My father was a complicated man who made difficult choices. He wasn't perfect, But he taught me that some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight costs you everything. Truth is worth fighting for. Justice is worth fighting for. The people you love are worth fighting for. And here's what I learned. You don't have to be fearless to be brave. You just have to be willing to act despite your fear. You don't have to be perfect to be good. You just have to try your best and forgive yourself when you fall short. You don't have to save everyone to make a difference. Sometimes saving one person is enough. So go into those hospital rooms with your whole heart. Advocate for your patients. Stand up against injustice. Be the nurse someone remembers 20 years later as the person who made them feel seen and heard and cared for during the worst day of their life. Be the hero of someone's story. Not because you'll get recognition or awards or your name in the paper, but because it's right. Because people deserve kindness and dignity and fierce advocacy. Because the world needs more people who care. My father spent 30 years running, but in the end, his greatest legacy wasn't the documents he saved or the conspiracy he exposed. It was the daughter he protected, who grew up to help others, who created scholarships for young nurses, who turned trauma into purpose. That's my challenge to you. Whatever happens in your life, and trust me, life will throw things at you that you never saw coming. Use it. Transform your pain into purpose. Turn your struggles into strength. Take the worst thing that ever happened to you and find a way to make sure something good comes from it. That's how we honor the people who sacrificed for us. That's how we make meaning from chaos. That's how we win. Welcome to nursing. Welcome to the hardest, most rewarding, most important profession in the world. Welcome to a career where you'll cry and laugh and rage and celebrate, sometimes all in the same shift. Welcome to a life of service. Your father would be proud. My father would be proud. Let's make them right. With love and hope, Claire Matthews, RN founder, Richard Parker Memorial Scholarship Fund. I saved the document and attached it to an email to the scholarship committee. This should go to every recipient, I wrote, along with their scholarship packet. Then I closed my laptop and went to check on Emma. She was awake, standing in her crib, babbling happily to herself. When she saw me, her whole face lit up with joy, pure, uncomplicated joy. I picked her up and carried her to the window. Outside, it was another beautiful spring day in Philadelphia. Cherry blossoms were blooming. People were walking their dogs. Life was going on, ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. "You know what, Emma?" I said, bouncing her gently. "Your grandfather was a hero. Your grandmother is a survivor. Your daddy is the bravest man I know. And your mommy, well, your mommy learned that she's stronger than she ever imagined." Emma reached up and patted my face with her tiny hand, as if to say, "I know, Mommy, I know." "And you," I continued, kissing her soft hair, "you get to grow up in a world where the truth won, where the bad guys went to prison, where justice prevailed. Not because the system worked perfectly, it didn't. Not because everything was easy, it wasn't. But because people cared enough to fight for what was right, even when it was terrifying." My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Coming home early. Thought we could take Emma to the park. Maybe get ice cream. Maybe celebrate the fact that we're alive and together and happy. I love you." I typed back, "Perfect. We'll be ready. I love you too. So much." As I got Emma ready for the park, I thought about everything that had happened. The betrayal, the conspiracy, the violence, the fear, but also the courage, the love, the justice, the healing. A year ago, I thought my life was ending. Turned out it was just beginning. Because here's what I finally understood. Life isn't about the dramatic moments. It's not about the DNA tests and the shootouts and the newspaper headlines. Those things happen, and they're important, but they're not what life is made of. Life is made of Tuesday morning pancakes, terrible paintings that you make with love. First steps taken on an ordinary morning. Text messages from your husband about ice cream. Scholarship students who remind you why you do what you do. Mothers who finally get to be mothers again after 30 years. Life is made of the quiet moments after the storm, when you realize you survived and now you get to live. And that, I thought as I buckled Emma into her stroller and headed out into the sunshine, is the real miracle. Not that we defeated the evil conspiracy, but that we got to have ice cream in the park on a Tuesday afternoon, that we got to be normal, that we got to be happy, that we got to be free. My phone buzzed one more time as we walked to the park. Another unknown number. For a split second, my heart clenched. Old trauma. Old fear. But when I opened the message, it wasn't a threat. It was a picture. Ava Thompson, holding little Michael, who was now over a year old. They were standing in front of a small house with a garden. Both of them were smiling. The message read, "Claire, I wanted you to know, I finished my GED. I'm starting community college in the fall, studying early childhood education. Michael is healthy and happy. My family has been amazing. We're going to be okay. Thank you for showing me that it's possible to turn mistakes into second chances. I'm naming my first classroom, when I get one, the Claire Matthews Learning Center. You saved my life in more ways than one. Ava." I stopped walking and just stared at the picture. Ava, who'd been used and manipulated. Ava, who'd made mistakes but was trying to do better. Ava, who was building a good life for her son despite everything. She was going to be okay, too. We were all going to be okay. I texted back, "So proud of you, Ava. You're going to be an amazing teacher. Michael is lucky to have you as his mom, and you don't need to name anything after me. Just live a good life. That's all any of us can do." Her response was immediate. "Too late. Already decided. And Claire, thank you for not hating me. Thank you for seeing me as a person who made mistakes, not as a monster. That made all the difference." I slipped my phone back into my pocket and continued walking to the park with Emma. The sun was warm on my face. Birds were singing. My daughter was babbling happily. And somewhere in the city, scholarship students were studying to become nurses. Ava was preparing for college. My mother was painting terrible artwork. Ethan was finishing his work so he could come meet us. Life was happening. Ordinary, beautiful, miraculous life, and I was finally, truly, completely free to live it.